Good day and welcome back to the Vitality Project. I'm Dr. Bob. Thanks so much for joining me. Yesterday, we took a big step toward getting clear about what active addiction really is. I asked you to spend a few minutes gathering your own thoughts about addiction in your own life, whether your own personally or that of someone close to you. Let me ask you this. What did you discover? We're talking about looking at active addiction. You know, when I ask most people in groups, for example, that I lead or classes that I teach, when I ask people what active addiction is, most of them answer me with something like this. It's when you're high or you're intoxicated or altered, some variation on that. And you know, that's true. That's a good start because that's true. It's just that it's not complete. And we want to talk about how it's not complete. To complete our definition of active addiction, we've got to expand it quite a bit. Think of it this way. Active addiction, and I'm going to talk about it in the first person, and if it applies to you, I hope you will too. Active addiction is when I am drunk or loaded or high or altered or intoxicated. It is that. That's true. But also, if we look at this from a body and brain perspective, actually, active addiction doesn't stop just when I'm intoxicated. It also includes some version of what we call a hangover, which follows almost always immediately in the wake of our being drunk or high or altered in some other form. With substances, this hangover may be accompanied by nausea, anxiety, depressed mood. For starters, any of you that have gotten drunk or gotten high know exactly what I'm talking about. The body's rebound effect can be quite harsh, and so that applies. And how about other behaviors? We've talked about behavioral addictions. Well, why don't we throw in the fact that after performing or committing or indulging, however you understand it, in some kind of compulsive behavior that is self-defeating, oftentimes what we'll experience is guilt, regret, shame, and for many of us, secrecy. So I want to emphasize that there's more to active addiction than just the consumption of a substance like alcohol, let's say, or some other behavior for that matter. But also it's what follows on the consumption or the acting out of the behavior. And we can call it a hangover. Biologists call it withdrawal. Oftentimes active addicts call it simply getting sick. People assume that people get high on drugs because they like to party so much. Most of the people I work with in recovery get high in order to stave off getting sick. That's the technical term they use. That's the colloquial term they use for what's technically called withdrawal. And we'll be talking about all of this a lot more over time here together. But for today, I want to ask you, could you spot yourself just a few moments to recollect a time, it could be even recently, when an addictive behavior in your own life led to unpleasant consequences? And what were those consequences? What were they specifically? What did you feel? You know, I talked about shame, or I talked about guilt, or I talked about regret. Those are emotional responses. What did you feel? What did you think? How was your thinking process going? And how did you behave amidst this withdrawal phase or this hangover? How did you act? We're talking about a cycle of active addiction, and we're not even done with it. So we're talking right now about intoxication, what follows. We're going to talk about what precedes that in our next conversation or two. So come back tomorrow for that conversation as we continue to expand, I think, what is a conventional understanding, but too limited, of active addiction. And I'll also be underscoring these next days of why our understanding what active addiction is, especially from a body and brain perspective, why it's so incredibly important as we begin to move towards addressing addiction and ideally moving into recovery in a sustained and successful way. It's really important that we get what active addiction is. That's it for today. I want to thank you again for taking a few minutes to spend here with me. I hope that this is useful. I wish you well with the homework assignments. Please stay well and healthy during this time of COVID, and come back and join me tomorrow. I look forward to seeing you.